The New York Rangers part ways with several coaches. They re-sign an impending unrestricted free agent, and we're going to talk about all that today, plus another player that I believe the Rangers could, perhaps even should look to target at number 23 in this year's NHL draft. All that and much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 845 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And Locked On New York Rangers is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So wanted to go ahead, just dive right into it here, talk about some of the changes that the Rangers have made to their coaching staff. And none of this comes, I think, is too much of a surprise. You know, usually when the head coach gets fired, the assistant coaches sooner rather than later, follow suit. And word came out yesterday. There was a tweet from Vince Mercogliano. The Rangers, whoever the next head coach is going to be, will not be retaining assistant coaches Mike Kelly, Jim Midgely, or Gord Murphy. All of them are no longer with the New York Rangers organization. However, Benoit Allaire, obviously the goalie coach, he, for now, is still with the Rangers and hopefully remains with the Rangers as long as that guy wants to keep coaching hockey, because he does a fantastic job as the goalie coach. And Mark Ciaccio, the skills coach, also still with the Rangers and expected to be back. I'm not so sure he has quite as much job security as maybe Benoit Allaire does, but more on that in a second. First, we'll talk about the three dismissed coaches. Again, none of this is really all that surprising because when the head coach gets the axe, the assistant coaches more often than not follow. And of course, Benoit Allaire, once again, a rare exception to that rule. And more on Benoit Allaire and Mark Ciaccio in just a second. But again, for the three that won't be back, once again, Mike Kelly, Jim Midgely, Gord Murphy. We'll start with Kelly. He is basically been Gerard Gallant's right-hand man for quite some time. He was Gallant's assistant coach for the first time all the way back in 2009. That's when Gallant was coaching the St. John Sea Dogs of the QMJHL. Kelly actually took over as the head coach for just one season after Gallant left that position. Then Kelly was also part of Gallant's staff with the Florida Panthers in 2014, the Knights in 2017, and of course the Rangers for the 2 years that Gallant was here as well. And as now seems to be the case with Kelly and the Rangers, the same fate kind of befell him here that befell him in other places that he's been. Once Gallant gets fired, Mike Kelly is out the door right along with him, and it looks like that now is the case as far as Mike Kelly and his future with the Rangers, no longer with the organization. As far as Jim Midgely, had previously worked as a scout with the Philadelphia Flyers, was also a coach in the QMJHL, and he, with, again, Gallant's dismissal, he goes right along with him. And it's interesting because at first, only Kelly and Midgely were announced as no longer being with the organization, but once again, per a tweet from Vince Mercogliano, the same can now also be said for Gord Murphy. Murphy spent some time as an assistant coach with the Wolfpack and Kris Knoblauch, so he does have some history and a little bit of familiarity with the at least some of the current players on the New York Rangers. But to kind of connect the dots here, and a couple people pointed this out on social media, with Gord Murphy being dismissed, it probably leads you to believe that Kris Knoblauch will not be the next head coach of the New York Rangers. This is something we talked about going back a couple of weeks now. We were talking about Kris Knoblauch and his, candidacy to be the next head coach of the Rangers. And I said at that time, if you're Gord Murphy, you're keeping your fingers crossed and you're hoping and praying that Kris Knoblauch is the next coach of this Ranger team, because my understanding is that Murphy and Knoblauch are very close. They've coached together at a couple of different stops, including the Wolfpack. And so Murphy's best chance of sticking around was probably going to be if Knoblauch became the next head coach. The smart money would be on Knoblauch wanting Murphy to be there as his right-hand man and, part of his coaching staff as he was with the Hartford Wolfpack. I mean, I guess technically in theory, if Knoblauch were to, rise up here and become the next head coach of the New York Rangers, which seems not all that likely at this point, but if that were to happen, I guess they could just rehire Gord Murphy. But, I mean, what sense would that make to do it that way? Then again, this is the Rangers, so you never know for sure. But yeah, it looks like, barring something completely unforeseen, Murphy will no longer be with the organization. And again, his dismissal leads you to believe that Kris Knoblauch, his chances of being the next Ranger head coach are probably getting slimmer by the day here, unfortunately, because I would have liked to have seen him got a chance. I think maybe he is at the top of my list as far as potential next head coaches for the New York Rangers, but doesn't look like it's going to be happening. Switch our attention to Benoit Allaire. Assuming that, he stays in place, which right now it seems like he's going to for this upcoming season, and again, hopefully beyond, he will be with his 6 different New York Ranger head coach. He's been there with Rennie, Tortorella, AV, Quinn, Gallant, and now to be determined, whoever the next head coach will be. And why not? He's got an amazing track record. We've seen, obviously, what he did with Henrik Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist goes from a 7th-round afterthought in the NHL draft to being a slam dunk Hall of Famer, a Vezina winner. Igor Shesterkin, obviously, he's taken the NHL by storm ever since he made his debut, despite only being drafted in the 4th round. Had a Vezina 2 years ago. And again, looking like he's going to be one of the elite NHL goalies moving forward. And even for guys that aren't necessarily superstars, but goalies that have come up with the Rangers or made their way to the Rangers at one time or another, you look at guys like Cam Talbot, Antti Ranta, Alex Georgiev, all of them have enjoyed or, certainly look like they're about to enjoy, in Georgiev's case, very successful NHL careers, been starting goalies for a couple of different teams. And, obviously, I think a lot of that goes back to the work that Benoit Allaire does with all these guys. It seems like every goalie that he gets to work with ends up doing a lot more in their career than you would probably expect them to do. And, even Yaroslav Halak this past season got off to a rough start, righted the ship. And, I can only assume that Benoit Allaire had at least a little bit to do with that. Look, upgrading on goalie coach for the Rangers seems almost impossible, so there's no reason to do it. Might as well be loyal to the guy that's done all this great work with your team and obviously keep him around for the next season. Skills coach Mark Ciaccio, he also stays, at least for now. There are times where he draws the ire of Ranger fans every now and then because he is the skills coach, and we see situations where certain Ranger forwards maybe don't really reach their full potential. I mean, you've had 4 different Ranger forwards drafted in the top 10 overall in the last, 5-6 years, however long it's been. Elias Anderson and Vitaly Krasov were both complete disasters. Alexei Lafreniere and Capo Caco, I mean, they've had their moments, and I think 2 years ago in the playoffs, they did a nice job along with Philip Hedl, but they've yet to reach their full potential. So I'm not sure that Ciaccio has, he's still here for now. I'm not sure that he still has the kind of job security that Benoit Allaire has, and certainly he doesn't have the sparkling resume that Benoit Allaire has. We'll see what ends up happening there. But Ciaccio's actually been with the Rangers for about a decade now. He was hired by Jeff Gorton for the 2013-2014 season, and mixed results with the Rangers. There are some players that have obviously developed. You look at guys like Keandre Miller. I think Braden Schneider is a good recent example. You could even maybe throw Adam Fox in there. I realize he wasn't drafted by the Rangers, but obviously he got his first taste of NHL action with the Rangers. So, there have been some hits, there have been some misses. I think sometimes, though, Ciaccio has left something to be desired, and there are times where, Ranger fans, they'll be talking about, they're not developing this guy, that guy's not developing. And look, he's the skills coach, and I think the official title is like skills development coach for Mark Ciaccio. So, it kind of starts with him, and obviously keep our fingers crossed that if he is still here, he can develop more of these players than he's not able to going forward. But I want to keep everything rolling in just a second here. Want to go ahead and talk about a couple of minor league free agents for the New York Rangers, including one who just re-signed with the team. We've been going through every free agent that the Rangers have, and we've started with the UFAs this year. We've covered all 5 UFAs on the Rangers right now. Let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. You got Mikkola, Mott, Halak, Kane, and Tarasenko. There we go. So if you miss any of those episodes, you can definitely go back and check those out. They won't be hard to find. They were all recorded fairly recently. But today, going to run through 3 different minor league free agents for the Rangers, once again, including one who just re-signed with the team. And we're going to do all that in just a second. But first, gotta let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you are about to have. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're all set. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, stick around. We could have a Ranger announcement that they've named a new head coach later today. Maybe it drags out a little bit longer, but either way, we're going to be all over it on this podcast, and very much looking forward to getting some finality, getting some resolution here. But for the time being, for today, let's go ahead, turn our attention, as I mentioned, to a trio of minor league free agents for the New York Rangers, and we can start with Ryan Carpenter, the one that I believe has the most NHL experience out of any of the Wolfpack free agents. 32-year-old center and right winger. Came over as a free agent from Chicago on a 1-year deal at last year's league minimum of $750,000. We've talked this offseason about how the Rangers, they're going to have to fill out their roster with some really inexpensive players. The last couple of guys on the roster are going to be making the league minimum or maybe just a shade above the league minimum. That's just a way that the Rangers are going to have to construct this roster if they are to stay underneath the salary cap. And that's kind of what they did with Carpenter last year. The hope was that he could center the fourth line, kill some penalties, give you some physical hockey. Got off to kind of a slow start with the Rangers, was never really able to take the bull by the horns. Ended up being placed on waivers, cleared waivers, went down to the Hartford Wolfpack and spent the rest of the season there. And honestly, he was just outplayed by other guys that the Rangers called up at various points during the season. Johnny Brodzinski definitely comes to mind. I thought he gave the Rangers a lot more than Ryan Carpenter did. And honestly, even when Dryden Hunt was here, I preferred Dryden Hunt over Carpenter. I would say even the same thing for Ryan Reeves. Obviously, a lot of those players are no longer with the team, but be that as it may, Carpenter just never really was able to, once again, take the bull by the horns with this New York Ranger team. Played 22 games with the Rangers, 1 goal, 2 assists, was also a -5. Averaged just 9-11 of ice time per night, 54% success rate on the faceoff circle, 11 block shots, and 35 hits. And again, placed on waivers, sent down to the Wolfpack, never made his way back to the Rangers with the Wolfpack. 51 games, 21 goals, 23 assists, so 44 points in 51 games. Another 9 playoff games with the Pack, 2 goals, 3 assists. And that was actually his first time playing in the AHL since 2016-2017. Played 330 career NHL games, has Ryan Carpenter. I don't think the Rangers have any grand plans for him, and I would imagine he'll probably want to sign somewhere else for this upcoming season, try to work his way back onto an NHL roster. Doesn't look like he's going to have that chance when it comes to the Rangers, especially after kind of a lackluster showing in the 22 games that he played for them this season. We've also got Anton Blidh, a 28-year-old left winger. He actually just signed a contract to stay with the Rangers. I was actually taking notes on these players just yesterday, Wednesday, and was prepared to talk about Blidh and figured, maybe he walks in free agency, but no sooner than a couple hours after I finished taking those notes, the Rangers announced a new 2-year deal for Blidh. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But actually, to kind of just take it from the top here, he started this past season with the Colorado Avalanche, had played part of 6 seasons with the Bruins before that. 84 career games for Blidh in 7 years. So obviously, has never really stuck on an NHL roster for all that long. In those 84 games in the NHL, 4 goals, 8 assists. This past season with the Avalanche, 0 points in 14 games. Then he was traded to the Rangers on March 3rd in exchange for Gustav Riedel. Played 17 games with the Wolfpack, 4 goals, 8 assists, 9 playoff games where he had 2 goals and 5 assists. Former 6th-round pick by the Boston Bruins. And, he's just going to basically serve as organizational depth. It's tough for Blidh because, as far as I can tell, I don't know if he ever plays any other positions, but left wing, if you're somebody waiting for your chance and you're somebody that's kind of become a career minor leaguer, left wing is not the position to be playing when you're on the New York Rangers. There's a lot of guys in front of you there. So we'll see if he ends up ever playing any games with the Rangers. But for the time being, 2-year deal with the Rangers, a 2-way deal, worth $775,000. That's the league minimum in the NHL, and $350K in the minors. He also gets $385 guaranteed. And I think it's fine as organizational depth. This is somebody that, has played a lot of professional hockey. He's kind of a veteran player. If there's a situation where somebody gets hurt, you need somebody to kind of plug and play into, the NHL lineup. You can do that with Anton Blidh. Moving along here, CJ Smith, 28-year-old defenseman, another undrafted player, has played just 15 career NHL games, 14 with Buffalo, 1 with Carolina, 2 goals and 1 assist to go along with a -2 in those 15 games. He signed a 1-year, 2-way contract with the Rangers this past offseason, 21 games with the Wolfpack this year, 4 goals, 2 assists. We'll see. He might be back as organizational depth, but I feel like, 28 years old, having only played 15 career NHL games, his chances of making a significant impact with the Rangers and probably even playing a game with the Rangers, not all that great. But again, you need some players on your minor league team, and if the injury bug bites, it's good to have a veteran defenseman who's been around and somebody that you could call up in a pinch. But I don't think the Rangers, whether they re-sign him or not, it's not going to make or break the organization, but obviously we'll keep our eye on that as well, because as I talked about, we are covering every single free agent that the Rangers have in this year's class, and just knocked out a couple of minor league free agents here. Talked about the re-signing of Anton Blidh, and we'll see what happens going forward. We're also going to eventually shift our attention to the RFAs, and the 2 big ones for sure, Alexis Lafreniere and K'Andre Miller, but the 2 of them, obviously, very important decisions to be made there. What kind of contracts are they looking at? The whole 9 yards. Both of them figure to be important pieces of the Rangers going forward, barring an unexpected trade. We'll see what happens there, but we'll talk about all that in a future episode. Very much looking forward to doing so. To kind of wrap up today, something we're going to do in just a second, going to turn our attention once again to the NHL draft, and we're going to spotlight Ethan Gauthier, a right winger with the Sherbrooke Phoenix of the QMJHL. So we're going to talk about Gauthier in just a second. We've kind of been focusing in on right wingers. I really want the Rangers to use their first-round pick to take a right winger this year. We'll see if they do that, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first, gotta let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any movement. Birddogs use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your bird dogs. We promise you. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL. All right, I want to go ahead, keep everything rolling here, wrap up today by once again shifting our attention to the NHL draft, trying to, basically list all the different candidates, different players, different prospects that the Rangers could look to take with that number 23 overall pick. The Rangers don't have a second-round pick this year in the draft, barring them trading up or anything like that. So that makes hitting on this first-round pick all the more important. I mean, it's always important, but more so when you don't pick again until the third round. But anyway, today we're going to be focusing in on Ethan Gauthier, once again, right winger for the Sherbrooke Phoenix of the QMJHL, 5'11", 176 pounds, 18 years old. We already covered, and you can check out some recent episodes to hear my thoughts on these players, but we already covered Matthew Wood and Daniil Boot. Both of them are big-bodied right wingers. We're sticking with right winger today. Ethan Gauthier doesn't have the size of either of those two players, but I wanted to, take a look at somebody that's a little bit different, a little bit of a different skill set, and somebody that the Rangers could consider. I'd probably put Wood and Boot ahead of Gauthier if I'm just ranking them right here, right now. But be that as it may, we're still going to talk about Gauthier, make a case for him, especially in the case that those other two players are no longer available to the Rangers when they're drafting. But yeah, with Gauthier, he can shoot. He's got some grit, has a high hockey IQ, a lot of energy, solid player in all three zones, has some grit to his game. And, reading all the scouting reports that I have about Gauthier, it feels like he's one of the more just kind of well-rounded players. You know, there's certain players in this league that we talk about kind of being like a B or a B plus at everything. You know, Vincent Trocheck comes to mind. Andrew Kopp, when he was here, he was somebody that I think kind of fit that description as well. I'm getting the sense that it's kind of the same deal with Ethan Gauthier. Maybe there's no one area where he absolutely excels, but it's hard to find really any glaring weaknesses in his game. He played, once again, in the QMJHL these past 2 seasons. 2 years ago, 18 goals and 21 assists for 39 points in 65 games. This past year, quite the jump in terms of the scoring department for Gauthier. 66 games, 30 goals, 39 assists, so 69 points in 66 games. Became a point-per-game player and helped Sherbrooke make a little bit of a run through the QMJHL playoffs. They actually swept their first 2 playoff opponents, and then they played Halifax in the semifinals, lost in 6 games. But in the playoff run, another 11 games for Gauthier, 4 goals, 7 assists, was also an even plus-minus in the playoffs. He's, for what it's worth, the son of former NHLer Denise Gauthier, and I always find it interesting to kind of look at the rankings for some of these players, because there's so many scouts that do such an unbelievable job, you know, breaking down film and going and you know, watching these players and pretty much the whole 9 yards here. But, you know, I always find it interesting to look at the rankings and see where they have, you know, certain players listed. And with Gauthier, we're going to go ahead and pull up his file real quick here, and we will do that in just a second. So there are 12 different publications here that I'm looking at, and this ranges, again, for everybody from elite prospects to, you know, Bob McKenzie to Dauber prospects, prospect hockey, you name it, pretty much everybody, you know, ranks these players and voices their opinion on the kind of player that they're going to end up being. But bottom line, I'm looking at 12 different rankings here. The highest is Recruit Scouting. They have him at number 15. The lowest is Smart Scouting, that has him as low as actually number 79. But other than that, nobody else has him ranked any worse than number 40. So the general consensus here that I'm getting looking at all these different rankings is that he probably will be available to the New York Rangers when they pick at number 23. And like I said, he's somebody that they could certainly consider. He is, for what it's worth, also the cousin of former New York Ranger Julien Gauthier. So obviously it didn't work out with Julien, but maybe it works out with Ethan. We shall see. But I figure I can go ahead and leave you guys with a couple of scouting reports as it pertains to Gauthier. You got Corey Pronman from The Athletic. He said he's got a ton of skill and offensive IQ. He can beat defenders one-on-one at a high rate, making creative plays in small areas, and showing he can create a lot for his teammates too. You've also got this from Haiti Kalakech from Dauber Prospects, a relentless forechecker with a solid shot. He often creates off of turnovers by combining these 2 skills. He gets to the inside often enough, but could stand to improve his skating posture and edge work to gain that extra gear required at the next level. And then finally, Stan Costantino from Sportsnet. There's some grease to his game, will battle to create open ice, but also has the goal-scoring knack to get there quietly. And so again, an intriguing prospect. He doesn't have the size and the strength of the other 2 guys that we talked about so far, Wood and Boot, but an interesting prospect to say the least, and somebody that currently projected to go kind of late in the first round. That's the general consensus, although there is a little bit of a range, you know, among the scouts. We'll see how it all shakes out, but somebody that I think the Rangers could consider if he is there at number 23. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.